late in the evening. You just got home, kicked off your boots, poured yourself a drink and stretched out on your lounge chair. You're looking for some sweet distraction. As you browse your screen, what catches your eye? It's a post of a colleague? Work stuff? Business news? Do you click on a freaking advertising? I don't think so. You go for something that resonates with you, visually, culturally, intellectually, a relevant story, something that's entertaining. And that's what brands have to provide today to gain the attention and the interest of their audience. And that's why I'm talking to someone who successfully founded and grew his company on the idea of bringing business and entertainment together. Sweet people, welcome to the Sweet Spot podcast. I'm your host, Marc Suess, and if you want to find and share the sweet spot of your brand, you've come to the right place. Today, I'm talking to Matthew Smith. He's an entrepreneur, an entertainer, and you're in for a fun episode. Matt was a child actor before he entered the world of finance and investment, but his calling to be on stage was strong, and so he started to work as a host and a presenter. First as a side gig, soon making it his full-time job. He realized the potential of bringing business and entertainment together and founded the Lunicorn, a company for innovation infotainment. A lot has happened since then. He sold his company, the big exit, every founder's dream, but soon bought it back. This and many other amazing stories await you in this episode, along with insights from the startup world on how to found and grow a business and some great lessons for personal growth. So without further ado, enjoy my talk to Matt Smith.
Welcome to the Sweet Side. This is the Sweet Spot podcast with Marc Suess, investigating entrepreneurship, purpose, and the creative life.
Sweet people, it's my pleasure to welcome to the show, Matt. Hey, how are you?
Mate, I love that you call everyone sweet people. Hello, sweet people. I'm waving at you. You can't see me waving because you're probably listening to this as a podcast, but they can feel it. I'm sending a strong wave and love through the microphone here. Hello, sweet people. And hello, Marc. How you doing, mate?
You're in Cape Town right now. How's life there?
Wow, life here is, as you'd imagine, in the summer months of the southern hemisphere. That's why I'm here. Mm-hmm. It's heaven, man. It's heaven. I don't know if many of you listening to this have been there, but it's we tend to, as Europeans, those of you who are listening to this are European. We get the luxury of traveling around Europe and all these different locations, right? But South Africa, it's definitely on a bucket list of a lot of people. I know that, and I'm actually South African, so I came down here last October only for a wedding. For 1 month, intending to go back to Lisbon or elsewhere, but I stayed and I'm still here, and it's we're recording this in the beginning of 2022.
That's good. That's amazing. You bring some summer vibes into this. This is perfect.
Hopefully I'm sending some rays of sunlight to wherever you are in dark winter months.
100%. When sweet people will listen to this, it's something about mid of March or something. I think we're going to air this, and it's still going to be cold and kind of shitty weather up here. So it's good to bring some rays of sunlight in. That's perfect.
32 degrees right now.
Okay. We're happy for you. Not jealous at all. So, no. Matt, you are, as many of my guests, a creative entrepreneur. You're in a very special situation after exiting your startup, but we're going to talk about this later. I want to start at the beginning, I would say, where we first met. Because I think it was 3 or 4 years ago in Hamburg when we both had our startup companies and we were participating in an accelerator program. And I remember the first time seeing you. You were giving a pitch and I was thinking, what's that guy doing up there next to all of us? In a good way, business nerds, because they were the programmers and the marketing guys and everyone was geeking out about their startup. And you just stood up there, had a little talk show. You were an entrepreneur and also an entertainer of some sorts. And you were absolutely on top of your business. You were a freaking professional, but still you had so much energy and enthusiasm. And you were so connected to your startup and your product. And that really impressed me. And at the time, you were the CEO and founder of Lunicorn, a company for innovation infotainment, and you were creating multimedia innovation stories. You can watch it on YouTube, read it on Medium, listen to the podcast you do. So can you tell us a little bit about the story of your former startup Lunicorn and how your entertainer genes were totally a match for that?
Cheers, mate. I mean, you're taking me back to was it 2018 or 19? I think it was 19 when we both joined that program, right? So yeah, quite a few years ago.
Late 18, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, late 18. Exactly. You're right, actually. Yeah. And that's when we all got accepted and then started the program then. So firstly, I had a kind of parallel career. So just for everyone's context, my background was venture capital in London. I've always been involved in the, if you know, quote unquote, startup innovation in ecosystem. I was fortunate. My first career was in venture capital in London, in media actually, for Condé Nast, the largest privately owned media company in the world. For context, for those of you who hadn't heard of it, I've never heard of it before I started working there, to be honest. It owns Vogue magazine, GQ, Vanity Fair, and all the other titles. There's 123 titles, right? So I started in venture capital there, investing in lifestyle tech businesses. And I remember this. I was asked in, I think it must have been 2013 when I was just starting that job, at 23 years old, to do my first stage appearance, right? To talk publicly. And I remember going to my boss, who's a German guy called Jan Zabolta. Big love to that guy. He taught me a lot of things. And I asked him, I was like, Jan, I've been asked to speak at this event. And I was terrified. But I really wanted to do it. And I thought he'd say, Matt, come on, no. But he was like, okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions and see how you respond, So he asked me a few, perfect. He tested me on the spot just in his meeting room, in his office room. And he asked me some pretty straightforward questions and I gave some answers. He said, yeah, great. I trust you. Try to speak slowly, try to be humble and just talk about how we're supporting the things. Anyway, so I remember I did that show. That was sort of, I call it a show because I got on stage and I remember I made a joke. It was about someone else on stage who was in a panel with me, another VC. Now, I was, as I said, 22, 23 years old. And this other VC was, I don't know, late 40s, early 50s. And he complained about something, about how hard it is to raise capital. And I made a joke just on the spot about, maybe it was in your era. And everyone loved it, basically. And and it was completely off the cuff. It wasn't pre-rehearsed. It just came to me in the moment. And I was like, wow. I like this. I like to be in front of people and to add value, but also entertainment value and humor. Because otherwise the panel was pretty boring. It was like, so tell us how you invest in X and why. And I was there just sort of answering questions as a corporate person would. But I was like, we're in the startup game. This should be fun and entertaining. Anyway, so I got my bug then. This is 2013. And basically gradually over the next couple of years until 2018, when I actually founded that business, it's been 5 years now. And I did a series of different things in between that. I started to have this parallel to my normal career that was paying me a salary, whether it was a VC or whatever, as a public speaker, and it started slow. I was never paid, obviously. I didn't even know you could be paid to do this kind of thing. But I slowly was asked again. I thought, this at the beginning, this kid's kind of entertaining because I was talking about innovation, entrepreneurship, tech, whatever the topic was, but in an entertaining way, which was, I'd like to think it was educational, and it was more educational than just going up there and talking about a dry topic in a very serious manner, which can work and can be right for the right topic area. It also depends on your audience, but I would go up there and just add humor to it and into audience interaction and things that an entertainer would do, not someone talking about AI in medtech, Yeah. So anyway, so this sort of drew me to 2018 when I met you, where that year, I quit my job I was running an investor accelerator in Oslo, in Norway. I quit my job that year because just got to the point where that parallel career of passion, of infotainment, I started to be able to charge. And the day rates were, anything from €1,000 to €4,000, depending on what I was doing. And, so I decided that I was finally going to try and monetize my passion by creating a media business that brought infotainment to the tech industry, like Vice Media did to news.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example.
Yeah, that's when we met. So that sort of takes us up to that point. And that sort of was the beginnings of Lunicorn. And I can tell you lots more of how that snowballed into different verticals and how we monetized it and how we raised $1.5 million and then how I sold it. But you let me know which direction you want to go in. Who knows? If only, Mark, we could have an audience interaction right now. Pick option A, B, or C. Do you want to go in this direction, that direction, or, one day?
Exactly. Looking forward to that. That would be amazing. You could I'm just going to release like 3 episodes of us talking, and then you can now switch to part 1, 2, or 3. That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, but before we go more into depth, how you scaled up and ramped up the whole Lunicorn business, I'm really interested in that first part where you found your calling. I mean, you've been in the investment industry, which is of course cool and progressive, and you're connected with startup. But just as you said, a lot of people are still straightforward. It's at the end of the day, it's still you talk about money, talking about investment. Things get pretty serious sometimes. So I think this spark of being an entertainer must have been within you before. Did you feel this before? Has there been some occasions when you felt like, maybe I should do something else? Because a lot of people, before they align their inner calling or the inner creative voice with what they actually do for a living, there can be also some conflict sometimes. Did you ever feel that, or did it just fall into place because you were lucky?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's an element of luck, but I think so. When I was growing up as a child, I was an actor. I was a child actor. Mm-hmm. And when I was, I believe, 13 years old, so a decade before I did that speech, so 2003 versus 2013, I basically decided that acting wasn't for me because none of my friends were actors, and it was very much like the Glee Club in that kind of series on HBO, where it's like the nerds, the losers, the gay kids, the whatever it is, are in the acting club, and all my friends were like the jocks. They wanted to play rugby and all these other sports, whereas I was surrounded by these by these other kids, and I decided to shy away from that Glee Club. But I was an actor at heart. I wished someone was there to encourage me, to say, Matt, carry on doing this, and I didn't. So I went through a decade of basically going through the finance route, studying economics, doing a postgrad in finance. But I had this. I always had this what if, what if I became an actor? What if I became a performer? And I think in my life, outside of work and everything else, when I am hosting people. When I say hosting, I'm talking about, if you came to my kitchen on the left here, if you, Mark, I'd love to host you for dinner. I love to host people. Yeah. So this role as a host, when I like to cook as well. So I like to cook for people, and I put on a big show. Like I'm talking like, I had a party here the other day and I had a musician, and I make a lot of fuss around. So I think I had inertly, this feeling of being a host as being sort of an entertainer. Mm-hmm. And serendipitously, my career got to a point where I was asked to speak. And then I had this sort of meet cute moment, as the movie industry says, where I was like, hold on a minute, and I sort of, fortunately I met an industry which hadn't seen too much of it as well, so I thought I'd just go out there and try and be this entertaining person who added value in an informative and knowledgeable way, but delivered it in a memorable way. And, I wanted, quote unquote, people to learn while they laughed, as opposed to being, and honestly, like, I think up to that point when I decided, and I actually charged for the first time, because I was asked, all right, what's your rate? And I'm like, I have no idea what to charge for this. I had one of those beautiful moments where I was like, I would do this for free. And I had been doing it for free for 4 years or whatever. And then all of a sudden, people were asking me to be, paid for my time, which is fair, of course, because I'm taking years of training and being better at it and all of that. So I think, it was definitely one of those moments where I realized, like, God, I do this for free, and I was doing it for free, but I got to a point now where I could actually charge for it. And I think that was definitely an inflection point for me.
Okay. Now we caught up with 2018 when we met, and I'm super interested. You just over the last 5 years, up until that point, you started making a living from you being a presenter, entertainer in the business context. So, and then I'm very interested, why did you choose to transform this into a startup? Because other people might just say, okay, let's maybe write a book about it, go on a reading, performing tour, just make the most out of this business stand-up performance gigs. But you went a totally different direction. You built it into a probably scalable startup. So what was the idea and how did you do that?
So it's a funny one because I did things the other way around, right? So there is a famous media adage, which is the 3 C's: content, community, commerce, right? So you create highly engaging content and valuable content that'll build a community, and then you monetize that community. So you leave that monetization to the end. Now, if you think, I did things in reverse. I started in the business game, working with startups, investing in startups, then, helping startups and et cetera, then starting my own. And I monetized from day one, right? So for example, a YouTuber would start on YouTube and, grind. And if they could actually produce a video a week or a video, every couple of days for 2-3 years, and their subscriber growth would reach a level where they could potentially actually get sponsors and then monetize, right? Like the traditional method. Yeah. So I built a business and then tried to build a community and create content or create content in the community. So it worked because it worked and it didn't work. How that came about was simply, I saw a need for infotainment in our industry. I wanted to be the brand where people came for lighthearted entertainment, but also educational value for our industry. I wrote a book called the Startup Buzzword Dictionary, which is it's an awesome, funny book, 23 startup buzzwords from bootstrapping to exit, cartoon illustrated. It's my proudest moment because there is a lot of thought and intellectual humor that's gone into the cartoons. I urge you to check it out. But how to build a scalable business out of it. I could have gone out and been a brand myself, but I wanted to build a business behind it because I wanted to build something that would last and add value outside of myself. I could have, just produced content and bet on myself just to become a YouTuber or whatever else that was. But I wanted to build a brand around myself because, you can only work as much as you can with the hours in the day that you have. And then the value of that time is only ever going to be an X amount of, So I went straight, let's create a brand. Lunicorn, the name came about because I was looking for a working title for the project before I founded it in 2018. And my mentor, and who then became one of my investors and chairman, a gentleman called Andy Chen, he was the founder of the only music startup to ever compete with Spotify, Tidal.
Wow. All right. We've heard of it.
Well, he actually wasn't the founder. He became the CEO. He was brought in and he sold it to Jay-Z. Incredible Amazing. Story. But so he said to me, thinking about names, I wanted to sort of have a name that was synonymous with our industry, hence the unicorn. But I didn't want to be called the unicorn or the lean startup or whatever. So I thought, let's go for the Lunicorn because there's an element of the lunacy around the term unicorn. Looney Tunes, we created a cartoon character. So I created this brand. Quite honestly, definitely chose the wrong colors and schemes at the beginning. It should have been sexier and sleeker from the beginning. Big lesson there. But created this brand and went to market effectively as my own brand through this brand. Instead of just being Matt Smith, it was let's build the Lunicorn as a brand, create content, create engaging educational video content specifically that's mobile optimized, so it's only meant to be seen on mobiles. And then the ball started rolling. That's sort of how we got to that point.
That's a good story. So and then you took part in the accelerator program in Hamburg, and a while after that, you did your exit. But before we get to what happened after you exiting your company, I'm really interested in the combination of business and information and entertainment, because this is something that looks so, if you talk about it and if you look at it from the outside, it's, infotainment. It's been around for a while and still so little people do it. And I think it's more than ever incredibly important to everyone listening, no matter if you're an artist, a creative, an entrepreneur, founder, or if you just run a team and listen to this because you're interested in entrepreneurship. I think you are competing today with whatever you do. you're basically not competing with your industry or service or product competitors. You're competing for the attention of the people, right? So you're competing with Spotify, podcasts, Netflix shows, with everything else. So the element of entertainment, or at least being somewhat entertaining in what you have to tell people, is more important than ever, I think. So what have you experienced? What do you think about is the biggest gap between the world of business and entertainment? What can they learn from each other?
Well, I think, it's never been more important than it is today to create a brand, right? A good example of that is a friend of mine is a really awesome entrepreneur, a guy called Daniel Murray Serter. He also has a podcast called Secret Leaders, which I believe was #1 in the UK, actually, business podcast a year or two ago. Now Stephen Bartlett's taken over. He created a brand out of a problem, basically, which was brain health. Right. So he struggled with insomnia. He was a vegan. He thought he was eating everything perfectly healthily, but actually, his diet was contributing to his insomnia anyway. I've made a few episodes about it. Go check it out. It's interesting. And what he learned when he was going through some tests and spoke to some holistic health individuals was his diet was contributing to his issues. So he started to talk about brain health and this idea around, are you eating right for your brain? How often do you think about your brain health as opposed to your physical health and your mental health or whatever? Yeah. And he wanted to, brain health, like, who's going to buy something for the brain health? You need to market it in an engaging way. So he created a brand out of it, and he built this podcast behind it. Used the 3 C's: content, community, commerce. Started an email thread. I urge you to check out their story. It's really cool. And they started a company called Heights. Your Heights, which is a brain supplement, right? And now they sell a supplement, so they're a health food company effectively, which helps you support positive brain function and things like that. So I think that's a really good example of how they've used a strong purpose and built a brand around a strong purpose. And that is the reason they are successful, because they built a brand. And they built that brand because they have an engaging podcast called The Brain Podcast, I believe it is, or something like that. And they produce very engaging content that's informative. So I feel like it's never been more important to be a brand, but also be a brand that's positioned as a thought leader in your game or your industry. That brand needs to be an archetype of a character, of an individual that you believe your audience would engage with, right? And I think that's just so important for businesses today to create a brand, really, because everyone is on social media. They are fighting over attention. And the brand they created, it almost has a personality. When they do posts, it has a kind of humor to it, an entertainment value to it. They're talking about brain health, brain function. They're talking about neurons. They're talking about things that formerly weren't marketed in an entertaining way. But they're topical. For example, have you seen the Wordle? The world's obsessed with Wordle. Have you seen this? Yeah. This is game, right? That's just been bought by the New York Times, right? And they released a spoof of it, and they said, so if those of you are familiar with Wordle, you have 5 attempts to get 5 words and guess the word at the end of those 5 attempts. So you just guess a word at the beginning, and it'll say it's green if one of the letters is in the right place and gray if they're not. They showed 2 photos on their app. Now bear in mind, they're selling a brain supplement for positive brain function. One photo of someone who's failed on 5 attempts to get the Wordle. And then they were like, before Heights, after Heights, right? Responsive, interactive, engaging. And that was brilliant, I thought. And so just to emphasize the point, why I think entertainment and humor that was funny is important, because, I like their brand. I would choose to buy their products over someone else because of that post, because they have a sense of humor.
Perfectly well said. Yeah, great example, because it's such a scientific topic. And if you think about brain health and supplements, you can see the stats and the list of ingredients and nutrition popping up. And then, with this Wordle before after thing, it's a great example. Absolutely. And I think if I saw one of your videos on your website, and you hosted hundreds of events and you spoke to thousands of people when you were a speaker and a presenter. And I think your superpower is to engage, to entertain, and connect with the audience. And I don't think it has only an effect on the brand audience, but also on the brand itself. You do live shows for companies, and I think there's something that can boost morale and increase productivity even. So maybe you can go into this a little bit, because it's not only on the marketing side, which means, okay, create engaging content for your content marketing strategy or media outlets. So I think it also has a very great effect on the inside, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny you asked right now, because, for example, I just literally got off the phone before we started this podcast with my sister, my younger sister, who's amazing, and she's interviewing someone tomorrow in Singapore on a large stage. You know, she's actually recently been kind of getting into public speaking, just because she's at a point in her career where they're asking her to talk at shows and stuff like that. Now she's also in a similar industry. She works in the interjection between fintech and you know, the corporate world. And so she's asking me, like, you know, she's started to do a couple of these now, you know, and she's like, okay, so yeah, give me some advice, like how to do this. She's obviously scared, like many people are, of course, before they speak publicly with anyone. And there's a few things I just say, like, this is just a side note, just some tips about presenting, slightly off track here. But
we take it. We take it.
Good. Yeah. The audience is your friend. You know, like, the audience is not there to laugh at you and point at you and go, boo. No, they're there to say, to clap, to cheer. They're out of choice, right? So, but going back to your point about, you know, how to engage with people in this kind of this setting, what I've said to her really is to remember that, you know, if you make a mistake, no one knows the script that you're going to be reading off or that you're trying to keep in your head. You're the only one who knows the script, or someone else who's seen it or whatever. The audience doesn't know. And the audience always wants to support someone who's human and is engaging in a genuine way. You know, no one goes up on stage and makes no errors, you know. Humans go up on stage and make a couple of errors, right? So don't go up and be a robot. Anyway, so I've just sort of seen the benefits of, you know, using humor, not taking yourself too seriously, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, and that's what I've always done. When I go on stage, I make errors all the time. Hopefully I'm working better at speaking slower, being, you know, better pronounced. I can, of course, adapt to my setting. If I am in a very corporate setting and you know, and I will tone down the humor and just use it at the points that it's needed. But at the same time, I can also flip that on its head to the point where I created a live show. I created this live show concept, right? Which I think is probably where you're getting at a little bit with this, which I sell to corporates, right? So exactly. Many of you listening to this, you sweet people, oh God, I want to meet these sweet people, Marc. Many of you probably seen Saturday Night Live in New York, or The Tonight Show, you know, with Trevor Noah, with James Corden, Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, these talk show hosts, late night talk show hosts, who get guests on, and the formats are pretty similar because it's a working format. You know, it's a show. They do an opening segment. They're all like kind of comedians by trade, so they do a couple of intelligent, some of them more political, John Oliver, more politically intelligent jokes, some more societally celebrity intelligent jokes, and then they interview a celebrity or whatever, right? You know, and then they do some segments, right? And then they finish with a feel-good moment, and everyone claps and cheers, and they have a house band. You know, cool, right? We like that, but it's awesome. So I was like, why does this not exist for the startup industry? So, because it would be fun, right? Like, the startup industry is full of events. Like my sister's talking at tomorrow. Like you and I have been at 1,000 times, where it's either a demo day, a startup pitch off, some VC talking about what they look for in founders, some, you know, whatever, right? We've all been to the same one time and time again, and just a different location and whatever, right? So I thought I would make those shows more entertaining. So I created this, basically the Tonight Show for the tech industry. So I took the format and the formula that I know works, and I basically, instead of interviewing celebrities, I do an opening segment where I make jokes and I talk about, you know, whatever it is. I'll do an opening segment and then I'll interview founders. I swapped out like interviewing Brad Pitt and someone else with the founder of X business and added humor. And then I created games like Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel do, and James Corden. where they make a celebrity eat hot wings or whatever it is,
Exactly.
I created a show where I would bring on these entrepreneurs and I'd put them against each other. I'd make them guess buzzwords, because I did a book on buzzwords, startup buzzwords, the jargon that we all obsessed with. So I added these humorous, entertaining bits where we all learned, because I would say, for example, Mark, do you know what vaporware is as a startup buzzword? Do you know what that is? Vaporware?
What? Vaporware?
It's an official term given to something in our industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely no
Vaporware,
idea.
right? And I would ask these founders who are these amazing figures, and they'd all be like laughing and trying to figure it out,
Exactly.
And vaporware is basically a software that gets created but never sold and pushed out. So basically a team could work. Vaporware happens a lot in big tech companies like Facebook and Google, where they'll spend millions of dollars building something, and then they'll decide not to ever launch it, or it just, that's called vaporware, because it's a software that just disappears.
Perfect.
Anyway, so I and everyone in the audience is like, kind of, they learn what vaporware is, or something more important. That's just an example. But we're all laughing at ourselves in this industry because we have all these ridiculous buzzwords for things, right? So that's sort of what I created with the show, using humor, this infotainment, which, as you said, it had previously existed, and retrofitting it, reformatting it for our industry. Now, maybe I was too early. I sold out my first show, 400 people in Oslo. When I launched my book, actually, I did my first show. It's on YouTube. You can check it out.
Yes.
It was so much fun. I left that being so invigorated, thinking I was going to be the next Jimmy Fallon. It's it now. It's
That's
done.
perfect. Yeah.
Hollywood lineup. And I sell this show now. So, for example, a corporate, coming to your point there about engaging internally.
Yeah.
A corporate, such as, I did a show for Tesonet, which is a Lithuanian company we should all know about. I hadn't heard about it before, but it owns NordVPN, and they have a bunch of other businesses. They have 2,000 employees, so they're a pretty big unicorn in Lithuania, in Vilnius. So they saw my show on YouTube, and they were like, "We want this for our intercompany event," because like tech events I've done this at before. You go to a tech event and it's the same, obviously there might be some hopefully engaging conversations and speakers, but, then some musicians, but there's never been entertainment like that's industry relevant. And that's why I'm unique in it, because I understand the industry. I was a VC, I've been an angel, and I've been a founder. I understand all the nuances. I understand where to play on jokes. So I can, do a show that's educational and entertaining. And I sell that to like Tesonet. I did a show for them that was tailored towards cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. I've done a show for Deloitte. I've done a show for DNB, the biggest bank in Norway, that was focused on fintech. Yeah. And that's sort of a product that I've created out of what I do. And I try to book a couple of those as... I do those every day if I could. Unfortunately, I'm not, but I would if I could.
I love this, Matt, because, dude, you're absolutely mental, and I love this, and it works out. But I love the idea of just taking something that you really like and just putting it into your business and everyday life context. So if you enjoy late night, why not put up your own fucking late night show? I love that. And I mean, on the surface, this looks like a crazy idea, which obviously works, but if we go into detail, you already checked some of those boxes, but I think the connections that are built is, first of all, you cut through all the noise. It's in terms of talking about the attention economy. You're totally up there. And then also you build like all the foundational layers of trust, engagement, emotional attachment, humor, like all these things. You can even go to you mentioned it before, like the archetypical foundation that you view your life and even your business career as kind of a story. And there are all these Jungian archetypes involved in that, So where do you find yourself in your career now? Do you play the main role? Do you play the side part? Do you, which is your role, so to speak? And I think this is something that really people resonate with on a very deep level, so to speak, even for their life and the whole understanding of what am I doing? Why am I doing this? How are we supposed to do this? And I think that's very inspiring.
People love passionate people. Sweet people, really.
Exactly.
And this is the thing. What I've done shows, or I've done a talk, or whatever it might be over the years, and people have come up to me, and whether they've asked me to do one for them or whatever it is. One thing I've learned is just I go up on stage and I just become my true self. I am honestly, if I could live on a stage, Mark, I would. If I could literally live on a stage 24/7, I would. And it's not because I love the attention. Yeah, look at me, I'm so fabulous. No, it's not that. It's because I love the ability to take an audience and make them smile, turn them this way, make them laugh, pause. Yep. The power of the pause, you know, and add value. And I want, every time I do a show, whether it's I talk about angel investing, you know, with 20 people, or I go on stage in front of 5,000, the biggest audience I've ever had, at Oslo Spectrum, the largest venue where Trevor Noah did his comedy show that I went to, where there were 15,000 people in the audience, you know. I love being able to take that audience and take them on a journey. And even if I mess up, I'll laugh while I mess up. But everyone leaving that stage will go, that guy loves doing this. You can tell. Mm-hmm. And then they'll hopefully all have left going, well, that was a memorable talk, show, whatever it is. If I was just the MC and connecting the speakers, you know, that was a memorable event. Yeah. And yeah, the bottom line is people love passionate people. So, you know, if you have a passion, make sure it comes through, whether that's tiddlywinks, pottery, or public speaking, you know, people love passionate people.
Yeah, 100%. I think what you just mentioned are a couple of points that are especially also important when it comes to yourself as the performer. Like, embrace your fails, don't take yourself too seriously, just be out there, because this is something, I guess, especially in the German market, where people still are kind of strict when it comes to business. I mean, you witnessed it in person when you've been to Hamburg, Germany, even though it was the startup industry. People are more uptight, and I think this is coming from especially the American market and different other influences that swap into our industry here, that it's starting to loosen up. And I think these are very valuable lessons for everyone who's on a stage, whether it's the Monday team meeting, a very tiny stage in the office, or literally the big stage with 5,000 people. So, but Matt, let's circle back. Okay, I think we totally established why you love what you do, and you've been able to build the Lunicorn startup out of it, and you went all in. But as I mentioned before, you did your exit. So how did that happen? What happened exactly? Did you fly too close to the sun on your flying unicorn? Started that business in 2018. You know, to be honest, like I had a hypothesis, which was that mobile had just overtaken desktop and every other digital, you know, device that we consumed digital content on as the number one. So we consumed over 51% of our content, whether that be news, read content, you know, whatever, on mobile phones. So I saw that mobile was the future. And I also saw a converging trend in video. Video was like, you know, in the last 2 years, it had grown by 80% online. You know, something like 70, 80% of all online traffic was driven by YouTube videos. So I was like, wow, video, phone is what we're watching on. YouTube videos is what we're watching. Why am I watching a 16:9 video, you know, across like 20% of my phone screen, you know, and then I had to flip the phone, and people don't like flipping their phones, you know, like, so I saw an opportunity to create content that was relevant for the now. So that was sort of when the instigation came. And then I wanted what kind of content? I wanted to create innovation-led content, information about the tech industry. So yeah, started the business, joined you on that program, hired a bunch of people, raised some money, and how we actually made money, because, you know, it wasn't all about me. It was, I used my ability to present content and create engaging content as the unique selling point. And then, you know, I would, for example, go to a bank and say, let's create a mini series that's mobile optimized about student entrepreneurship. And the bank's like, hey, we really need to engage students, you know, and this could be a way to do it. Because we have a student-led, you know, incubator, for example. Yeah. So, and then they were like, all right, cool, let's do that. So that's how I kind of sold products that were, so like we were an iceberg of a business. Only about 10% of what you saw, content-wise, that I'm in, was what we produced. 90% of what we produced was white label, creative content for brands. And I used myself and the brand that I was creating to market the business, basically. So that's why I did that. It wasn't all about, hey, come hire Matt Smith, and I built a business behind it. My investors, you know, why would they invest in that? Like, why would they invest in a business where it's just like that?
So I tried to use my unique ability as a marketing tactic to get them in and then say, we can create the same for you. And that's what we did. So we did that over that period, and we accumulated a lot of really good customers. So we were one of the first people doing it, effectively producing content. And I wanted to get away from producing content. I wanted to build a brand and merchandise and other things around that. But we got Microsoft, we got a lot of the big banks, we got some corporates, we got a lot of customers, which were high value businesses, right? And that generated some good revenue for us. And then obviously 2020 hit. Now we're a business that creates and produces content, right? Which is quite labor intensive, and you need to go to locations. And funnily enough, in February of 2020, I just finished filming a 6-episode miniseries for the German government, for the DE Hub initiative through the Rocket, which is based in Berlin. And we went to 6 German cities over 2 weeks and trying to film episodes in each city of what makes those cities unique. Hamburg's one of them. And funded by them. And I got back to Oslo, where I was based. And I actually said to the universe, oh, please, I just want to be in one place for longer than a week, right?
So it's your fault, actually?
So it's my fault.
Now we know who's responsible. Jesus, man.
COVID is my fault. And I remember when the lockdown started, I was like, yeah, I was joking. I manifested that because I was traveling so much, producing shows and things and content, and with production teams and things like that as marketing content, as creative content for these businesses. So then obviously, fortunately, we just done this big show. And then obviously everything happened as it was. Things dried up. I laid off the majority of my team, took advantage of all, obviously the government stepped in to help everyone in Norway and many nations too. And then, the business was a little bit on hiatus. Like, well, what do we do now? Live streaming. So now this is actually a funny one, because I created a brand in myself of public speaking and being a host. Everything dries up. March happens, and then April's coming around. We've been locked up for 6 weeks, most of Europe. We did that 21-day, no one's allowed outside unless you have a dog lockdown. Remember that now. It's taking us back. And it's like, dude, that's like almost 2 years ago. Actually, literally almost 2 years ago. Exactly. Crazy. Then out of Estonia, Garage 48, they launched a hackathon. Many of you sweet people will be familiar with what a hackathon is. If you're not, it's a 48-hour hack, meaning you get a bunch of people, developers and business people, and try to create solutions to problems. So in Estonia, in Tallinn, Garage 48, some really brilliant people down there said, let's create a hackathon to hack our way out of the crisis. The world's biggest Guinness World Record, winning digital hackathon for the first time ever. So they did that in Tallinn. Now they started this wave where the European Commission said, we'll support, these initiatives. So the second city to do one was Oslo. So they needed a presenter, 2 presenters to sort of create a Olympic kind of HQ where we would talk during the whole hackathon, both to the people competing and both to the audiences watching. There were tens of thousands of people involved. Yeah, I got the call. Hey, Matt, we want a male and female host. Your name popped up. Could you do it? So I was like, yeah, I'm in. And then obviously my friend Yrje Oftedal, who has a podcaster from Power Ladies and is a TV personality and a celebrity in Norway, was asked to too. And we've worked together before. So her and I sit down in the studio. 72 hours later, we do, we do like 20 different live broadcasts online, Facebook, tens of thousands of people watching. Now the European Commission sees this. And then obviously like Lunicorn, obviously we pivoted towards live streaming now at this point, right? Yeah. Seeing that this opportunity was going to come to produce live shows like this and produce content for live events that now no longer can be physical, but have to be live online. Phygital was the term that was thrown around, part physical, part digital. Yeah. And that wouldn't have happened unless I tried to build a brand around myself as well that positioned us in that space, right? So that kind of helped us through that period. And then the European Commission, Yrje and I did 150 live broadcasts over 7 weeks during the lockdown phase. So that was an incredible pivot.
Yeah.
And then come to summer, one of my third largest investor, who invested in the business because he wanted to do a media play with his business one day. And they thought by investing in Lunicorn and Matt, we will buy lessons and learnings on how to do this, and also how not to do this. And basically they called me up in June of 2020 and said, hey, Matt, would you mind consulting to us for a bit to sort of see if we could do this YouTube channel and this media play? That happened for about a month or so, and it was a really good relationship. And then basically they said, like, how can we make this longer term? And I said, well, let's acquire Lunicorn. And I remember that dinner, I sat down with Eric. We went to a sushi bar in Oslo. Eric's such a cool guy. He's the founder of that business, the guy who invested in me. We had a bottle of wine, and then we started talking about how we can make this. And I wanted the conversation to go that way. And I know that, he knew that there was one way to make this work. And then, lo and behold, a month later, we were talking about them acquiring Lunicorn with me with it. And that's sort of where we got with those acquisition discussions. And then that was end of summer 2020. We announced the acquisition on November the 16th on my 30th birthday. We went public with their business acquiring my business.
Holy mackerel, that's timing. That's amazing. So maybe all the sweeties who are not aware of how this works, who have not been working in the startup industry, how can I imagine someone buying up your company and you being part of the deal? So how does it look? How did it look actually? How long were you bound to them? What do they expect from you to switch the role from founder and frontman to being part of the big new thing now? How does that feel?
I'm glad you asked, because it's a really interesting one, and everyone's story is different. And I'm gonna tell about a really crazy story that actually resulted in me 9 months later taking the business back.
Sweet people, how does your brand deal with the attention economy? Today, you're competing not only against other products or services from your industry, you're actually competing for the attention of your audience. Because the first step in every customer journey is attention, eyes and ears on your brand. That means you're up against such things as music streaming, social media, or video platforms. How do you deal with this? Answer is brand entertainment. With my studio, I help you to develop a brand entertainment strategy, finding meaningful brand stories that people can connect to, developing a content strategy, connecting your services or products to topics that are relevant in your audience's life, and crafting media products that capture the attention of your audience, build trust, and keep them coming back for more. So let's find and share your sweet spot with brand entertainment to get the clients you really want and turn customers into fans. Check out my website, sweetspot-studio.com, and get in touch. And now, let's get back to the show.
Acquisition happens. Now, obviously, this acquisition, how it typically happens is, the acquiring company will basically, either they will place some terms down. I actually went to Spain. They were based in Spain. I spent a weekend with the founders, and we thrashed out a deal that was basically, there's multiple ways you can acquire a business. Now, I'll give you a buzzword just because I obviously love to demystify buzzwords in the startup game. There is one of the acquisition types that's called an acqui-hire. An acqui-hire. So basically, you acquire a business because you want either an individual or their team. And that happens a lot in the creative industries because, like my business, the creative industries tend to be on contracts, like project-based business. So, for example, the design agency will say have 2-3 million euros a year of business with certain customers, but it's not reoccurring. It's year by year. So you can only really value that business on 1 or 2 times revenue. And actually, that business is very dependent on the people in the business. Your creative business is only as good as how creative your team is. And that's why brilliant creatives are the value. They are the business. So I guess I was very pegged to the Lunicorn. As much as I tried to push the Lunicorn front, you you couldn't have Lunicorn without Matt Smith, to be honest. Like, you really couldn't. So in terms of the business that I created with my customers was very much on relationships with myself, as is a lot of creative businesses. Many of you sweet people listening to this can probably relate. So obviously, Eric and Andreas, the founders, they wanted to buy Lunicorn, but if I gave them Lunicorn, they could have acquired us for the book of business, for our customer base, etc. But how do you put a value on that, right? Mm-hmm. Or our media channels or whatever, but they weren't huge. So it's, unless they're within the millions, it's like, well, which they weren't. Yeah. So I was instrumental to that, and also they wanted to create a business entity, in a media entity of their business. And I had that knowledge, how to do that. So obviously they wanted me, and they wanted the lessons and learnings and the channels that Lunicorn had created. So they needed to acquire me and the business together. I saw it as a great opportunity in a very difficult year of 2020 to take care of my investors. And I had 10 investors. I have 10 investors. And they'd all invested collectively 1.5 million Norwegian kroners in the business. Which was, 150,000 euros, basically, so that was our seed round then. And I saw it as an opportunity to take care of them. We as part of the deal, this acqui-hire, I would join their business for 3 years, and we would do a share swap. So their business, which was a really growing, scaling software business, had a 20 million Norwegian kroner ARR, which is an annual reoccurring revenue, 2 million euro reoccurring revenue business, and scaling fast. And our revenue was a lot less than that, so I was swapping shares. Basically, we did a share swap, a part share swap deal where we swapped our ownership, and I own, say, 70-something% of Lunicorn. My investors owned the rest, for a percentage in their business. And I won't say exactly what percentage, but I'll just use an example. So say it was 20% of their business, right? Mm-hmm. So basically we were swapping, our ownership for 20% of their business, right? Yeah. Which would be given to us over a 3-year period. Basically, every single month we would get 1/36 of that percentage. And there are cliffs and things like that in that, right? So if I were to leave earlier, then we would get less and all that kind of stuff, right? And it was a good deal. It was at the time their business was only going to grow. So that in my opinion, that was going to be worth millions of euros in 5 years. They would probably sell the business for a couple tens of millions of euros, which my investors would all get their money back times 3 to 30. Depending on how well it went, right? So for me, it was a good deal in a world where who knew if what was going to happen, right? So I joined their company. Right. And we had some certain milestones and things like that, which I started to work on with them. I inherited a team that they had already, and I started to run a small team within their organization. And it worked and it didn't work. And the team worked and initially what we wanted to do together, didn't work, to be honest. And so basically fast forward like almost a year, we realized that, this was a learning for everyone. They were paying me a very handsome salary. And that was part of the deal. Mm-hmm. We'd done the share swap, and they decided they needed to change the focus of what I was doing within their organization. Yeah. And because they're just such great guys, the founders, Eric and Andreas, they very amicably said, look, Matt, when we acquired you and they said to me, this is what we want you to do, and this is what I signed up for, that's changed. And because we love and respect you, Matt, we could say, look, dude, we own you. If you want to keep earning a percentage of our business, you do what we say. You move where we want. They could have done that, but they didn't. They said, Matt, we love and respect you. Obviously, we need you. That things changed for their business requirements. We need you to do this. We know that's not what you signed up for. And so basically, they said, look, we have 2 options here. You say, all right, fine. I'll take a hit and I'll just do this and I'll just grit my teeth and push forward, or we basically do a reverse acquisition, which is so rare in the startup game. I've never heard of one personally, apart from people buying back a business. So basically towards the end of summer last year, we did a reverse acquisition where, everything they'd paid me already was a sunk cost, because they paid me that as a salary basically through the Lunicorn. And we basically effectively just tore up the agreement that said we owned anything in their business. I took back the Lunicorn. So as of the end so basically within a year, I succeeded. I did the holy grail of the startup game and I sold my business. Yeah. I succeeded. And then I failed at succeeding a year later when I got the business back, or, however you want to look at it. Yeah. And it is so unorthodox. Credit to Andreas and Eric, who were just so amicable about the whole thing. Yeah. We even spoke about doing a big press release about it because it was so rare that we all agreed. And, no one, maybe they lost a bit of money and time, but actually they gained so much in the process, as did I.
It's not a fail. It's not a fail at all.
It's not a fail. It's not a fail. It's no hard feelings. It just didn't work out. Yeah. That's a really unique story, I think, that should be shared more often. And I probably should make a video or a podcast about it as well, because it's so rare.
100%. You know what I'm interested in now is your insight, because I think a decision like this, especially as you just put it, you've been on the peak. This is like every startup founder's dream. You do your exit.
I made it.
Exactly. You sell the baby. It's an acqui-hire. You're safe, so to speak. You're even wrapped up in this new corporation. So you don't have to go into detail what the conflicts were or something, but I wonder what you found within yourself emotionally, also as a vision for yourself, what standards you weren't able to drop, or which vision for yourself and your everyday work and your future you were holding on to guide you through this tough decision. Because I know that if you haven't accomplished something like that, and if you feel like, hey, I reached something that a lot of people, tons of people would value so much. So what was your inner voice saying to make you feel okay with reversing that whole thing?
I'm so glad you asked that, mate, because that's a really, really good question, because I've thought a lot about this and I've reflected on this, because I then took the following year off, which I can talk more about as well afterwards, right? So basically, I did the decision to do the acquisition because honestly, I saw it was an amazing opportunity to take care of the investors. We needed to raise money. I didn't have any employees at the time. I'd let them all go. The business was as it was. So I did that, and then I could have, of course, just carried on and kept vesting, kept getting the shares in their business every single month, and for my investors for the next 3 years, or year left, 2 years left, or whatever it was. Just over that. But I looked at myself and I was like, Matt, you're in your prime. You've spent all this time, all these years, building this side hustle, which turned into actually something of value and something valuable. And, they obviously and they gave me the option. They're like, we want to go in this direction, which would stop me doing that kind of stuff and focusing on something slightly different or completely different. And they are just, again, wonderful people because they gave me the option and didn't expect me to do it, But I just thought to myself, look, you could stay in this holy grail. An interesting thing, I learned something about myself, Marc. Sweet people listening to this, maybe you can relate. But, in the startup hustle game from 2018, I quit my good paying job. I took what money I had, started the Lunicorn, self-funded it at the beginning myself, fortunately gauged some interest, raised some money 6 months later. And then I could take a small but baby salary. And some months I didn't pay myself at all. But then I went through that 2-year period of basically earning bugger all, and then being able to make a little bit of side money on my public speaking, but I was mostly focused on Lunicorn, right? And then all of a sudden I had this really nice salary, right? Oh, finally. Safety, safety net, I have money in the bank every single month, guaranteed, right? And after a couple of months, I felt complacent. I felt a little bit demotivated. Mm-hmm. And I was like, geez, the grass is always greener. You think sometimes when you're an entrepreneur and you're in that hustle I actually, honestly, and it sounds ridiculous, but felt more, I could achieve more, and I was doing more, and I was more creative when I was kind of struggling a bit every month to month. Not, I wasn't hand to mouth. I'm never going to pretend that I was like that, it was that hard, but living off the business in that sense, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I had this nice salary, making up for the years past of poverty, effectively. And I realized that, damn, maybe I'm more of an entrepreneur than I thought I was, because I never like to describe myself as an entrepreneur, because I'm an entertainer that's monetizing a skill set, right? And also the term entrepreneur is so easily used and so overly used. Anyone can say they're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right?
You're talking to someone who sometimes has to call himself a designer. So that goes from the biggest agency to getting your nails done from a nail designer. So I totally know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Exactly. So I anyway, so I realized that, actually, I am more of an entrepreneur than I realized, because I realized that I all of a sudden had the fat salary and the security, and it wasn't giving me what I expected. I wasn't, and also I realized that, geez, when I had to all of a sudden report to a team and I had superiors now versus being the decision maker myself, I didn't actually cope with that very well. It took some serious adjusting, Marc, and I guess like anything, there's a transition period, right? And the team I worked with were very understanding, and they were entrepreneurs themselves, right? They saw me as an equal co-founder, basically, not the head of media, which is kind of what I was, really. So that was an incredible journey. I learned a lot about myself, and I definitely got a little burnt in some ways, because I, had... not many people know what actually happened. Not many people know that I took the business back, which actually is still a success, because the business is still alive to this day. It still hasn't failed.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a slow burn at the moment, and I once I'd gone through that, Marc, like, what next? Like, what do I do next with it? You know, I got the business back. I got all my investors back. I got all that obligation and that commitment back. I don't have a co-founder. I have no employees. I've spent the last year, telling all my investors, hey, I've made it for all of us. It might not seem right this second, but I guarantee you in a couple of years' time, this business is going to be worth a fortune, and we're going to own a good percentage of it. And you're all going to make your money back. And they're like, Matt, you know what? 2020, half our businesses have failed. You're a hero, Matt. You got through this. You sold. This is a success story. Yeah. And then, almost a year later, I'm like, so it's back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do I do now?
That must have been a hard sell for your investors, right?
I mean, like my chairman said to me, he said, Matt, I think a lot of your, it's a bit of an anticlimax is what he described it to me, very, very real. He said, Matt, it's an anticlimax. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I was just making the best decisions that I could at the time.
Sure. And also, I mean, if they trust and believe in you as the founder, they probably carry on with this. So, but I think this is very interesting, because this is kind of where you are right now, maybe a year ago. And I think something really huge happened, as far as I can tell from kind of the outside. We talk occasionally, but I follow you on social media. I check out what you do, and I see that after all these years of building a brand, being on stage, being an entertainer, very outgoing, and kind of living and working and putting a lot of power in everything outside that you have to do when you build, when you entertain, when you build programs and all of that. I think your focus shifted inwards, maybe for finding answers, for handling some big questions. So maybe you can take us with you what happened during the last year.
I like the way you've described it, going inwards, because that's exactly what this last year has been. It's been dating Matt Smith. Investing in Matt Smith, in myself, it has been, because after all of that, it was like, okay, what next now? Immediately, I made the first error, and it took me to make an error to realize what I needed to do, which was straight after that, I rushed straight into starting a new business. I kind of parked Lunicorn for a minute. It had a bit of cash in it. So I told my investors, look, look at the last year as I bridged the last year. Like the business would have failed otherwise. We did this thing, we bridged it, lessons learned. You can't not fault me on finding, you can't fault me on finding an option. I found an option, Anyway, they were cool. That I rushed into starting a new business with the wrong people. They're the right people for this kind of solution, but we were the wrong team. So I just rushed immediately into momentum. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then fortunately, before we really got too involved, I realized that, and we realized that, and we called it quits. So I'd basically wasted a couple of months going out of this crazy period into this new thing. And then I realized what I should have done straight afterwards is I should have taken like 3 to 6 months off straight away, straight after it, after the reverse acquisition. I should have literally, because it also finished in summer. So I was like, I should have literally gone straight off, taken some time off.
Yeah.
I didn't. I lost 2 months. That's fine. Lesson learned. Then I realized, Matt, go away. No social media, nothing external stimulations, distractions. You need to, I went through a breakup as well, which also contributed to this. Go and be with yourself and force yourself to dine alone, go on holiday alone. Now, we've all gone on holiday alone because we've all gone on business trips alone and all that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about taking yourself on holiday, like actually going on a holiday intentionally with yourself, not on a business trip where you're going to be catching. If I go to business trip in Hamburg, I'll text Mark and see if he's available. I'm going to see people. It's not, I might sleep. Exactly. Right. So I went away, to Croatia for almost a month, and, did everything I wanted to do, read, meditated, went for dinner by myself, something I've never been able to do beforehand and would be terrified of. Didn't sit there on my phone as a distraction, sat in that, journaled. And it was the most amazing experience,
So let me, before you move on from that, that's super interesting, because how did you pick the things you just described? Because that's sounds like all very planned out conscious decisions. Or did you just feel like that's what I need for myself? Or did you research something, plan that out?
I think it might have just been general knowledge that we all know. I'd been meditating all of last year, and I journaling is something that I've been looking into, and, just trying to talk about, what it is to be a modern man, like what it is, getting in touch with my emotions. For example, my father died in 2017, unexpectedly, heart attack, and it was a shock, sure, as it usually is for anyone who loses someone unexpectedly. And, I a lot of the, I won't get into the details of it, but like my father grew up in a generation which was very stiff upper lip. Men don't talk about emotions. They don't talk about pain, struggle. Yep. Men are men. Men just put on a brave face and they're, and soldier on, right? And, those are a lot of baggage that my dad carried with himself that could have been resolved, I think, if we'd spoken about it. But for example, my dad died and I couldn't cry, because I don't know how to cry. Because ever since as young as I can remember, I was taught that, boys don't cry, men don't cry, be a big man, and all this kind of stuff, right? So I taught myself to cry at the age of 31 years old, because, so this is some of the things. So I started to look inside and go, all right, so what are some burning issues that I have never made peace with? Like, my emotions, being in touch with my emotions, and I'll tell you this one thing, like I was terrified that if I got in touch with these emotions, that if I opened that door, the door would never be able to close again, and I'd just be this emotional wreck and this like really weak, emotional guy, and no girl would ever want me because I'm just, Matt always cries. He's so soft and in touch with his emotions. That's not how it works, ladies and gentlemen. I opened that door. I got in touch with those emotions. I acknowledged them. And now I'm so much more emotionally aware. I don't cry like I would expect. I thought I would just cry now at every moment. No, it's not at all. Yeah. But I'm more empathetic. And I believe that, I am more emotionally aware and in touch with myself. Yeah. I'm a better business manager because I'm more emotionally aware of people's emotions and in touch with them and empathetic. And I won't, if a guy, because I've had a guy cry in front of me in a business setting before, an employee. And at that point in time, all I thought to myself was, oh my God, this is so awkward. How do I get out of this situation? How do I deal with someone crying with me, let alone a man crying? With a woman, you can go, oh, they're there. I'm a man. You're a woman. I can give you comfort. Oh, here, cry on my shoulder. That's women cry. That's fine. A guy cries in front of you. Jesus, what do I do? This guy's weak. I want to get out of the situation. Oh my God, I'm going to tell someone afterwards he cried. What a loser, right? Which is in fact the absolute opposite. It's brave and it's strong to do that kind of thing. So anyway, I digress. But I looked inside and I started to sort of try to work on certain things, and I spoke about it a little bit publicly on social media.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because, well, first of all, I think we share that experience. I lost both my father and my stepdad mid-20s. And that to me was at the time, I think my learning curve was more about life and becoming more serious about everything. I've been kind of emotionally in touch on a different level, making music, being in the creative, very deep involved in creative projects. But I was like, who cares? Somewhere the money's going to come from somewhere. Something's going to work out. And to me, it was like a bit of the opposite effect, which is like, whoa, Mark, there's no more money. There's no security net. There's nothing else coming in. So you probably grow up and then you have to find the balance between dreaming big, making money, getting real, So I can absolutely understand that learning curve. And even though it's a sad occasion, I think you can always draw from that and learn from that about yourself and about life. And that applies to everything. So it's amazing that you talk about this publicly. Yeah.
Because, just lastly on that point, and I think this could be valuable to the audience, to all you sweet people listening, is the reason I just taught myself to cry was because when my dad died, I remember I sat around a table of his friends, at a pub in England. And, obviously, sorry. And one of them, who's obviously at that time, was in his 60s, he says to me, because my dad passed away at 62, he said, Matt, I said, I haven't cried. And he said, yeah, when my mother died, when I was in my 40s, I didn't cry. But, 10 years later, something clicked and everything broke and then I fell apart for a month or whatever, right? Yeah. And then, you'll cry, Matt. It'll come, right? And I thought to myself, why do I have to wait for this like inevitable breakdown? Like everyone's just told me at some point you're going to break down. It's going to, you're going to ruin, you're going to have to take time off work or stop, I don't know, whatever. And I was like, why do I have to wait for this ticking time bomb? Why can't I just face the beast now? And I think my father's passing as well, which was at the end of 2017, is completely correlated to me starting my business in 2018. Because one thing, sweet people, we can all learn from extreme settings and environments, right, is my father, in the case of my dad, like I looked at my dad's life, like the 6 months after his death, I looked at his life. At some point I reflected and I looked at my dad's life. I literally went through his years. He's 62 when he died. Was he doing what he loved and what he was passionate about? Did he do his hobbies and loves all the time? And I learned that my dad had made a lot of sacrifices, both for our family and things like that. But honestly, my dad's passion was sailing and engineering, but he went through a different path in life because he wasn't from anything. And my dad was actually very successful. But he was also enormously unsuccessful because he was smart, but he was an engineer from Cape Town, right? In the 60s or 70s. This place was deep apartheid. The world was boycotting it. No opportunities. You're not going to make anything of yourself, right? Yeah. So he was smart. So he did an MBA and went to business school and got a finance job, right? But he wasn't a finance guy. He was terrible at business, but he was smart enough to get the job, which got our family to Europe, which then created opportunities. And he became successful because he was smart, but he wasn't doing his passion or his interest. So, at the end of his life, I realized that, he never followed his passion or his interest. And then he died, And it was always talking about when this happens, I'm going to buy the boat. When this happens, that it was all about this push, all these big dreams, all these amazing things, and he was successful along the way. And then he was unsuccessful because he was in an industry which he didn't understand or love. And I looked at my life and I was like, I was 27 at the time. I had no regrets. But finance, I went down the finance route. I should have been a kid. I should have been an actor, Mark. Like I should have been pushed towards acting and performance. We're coming full circle here, because that was the thing that I was naturally good at and enjoyed the most. And I'm fortunate that I rediscovered that in 2013 when I did that first talk. And then when I moved to Norway, when I was still working in finance, no regrets. It's taught me and given me the knowledge that allows me to do what I do today. But my bosses, Meyer and Knut of Angel Challenge in Oslo in 2017, pushed me on stage and said, Matt, talk to this audience. And I was like, oh yeah, I love this. Oh yeah. And then people were saying to me, the one thing in my life, Mark, that the only thing really that, not to cry me a river here, but of course I'm been told, we've all been told we're good at certain things, and we are all good at certain things sometimes and bad at certain things sometimes. But the one space in my life where I've been told time and time again that I'm good at is when I do a show or I'm on stage and people come up to me afterwards and say, that was really funny. That was really entertaining. That was really valuable. You're good at this. And I'm like, wow, this is the one domain that I get the most positive feedback from. So 100%. I need to double down on this. So yeah, anyway, my dad's passing was one of those triggers, these life events that makes you go, am I doing everything that I should be doing in my life? And obviously within reason, you can't just go quit everything tomorrow and I'm going to be a painter. Well, yeah, you need to live. Like you said, there is a balance, right? Come on. I'm not saying that. I hate passion porn when people are like, are you not doing your passion? If you want to make ice cream, go make ice cream.
Exactly.
No. Anyway.
But yeah, I just wanted to add to that because this is something, first of all, thanks so much for sharing. This means a lot because I think talking about it is a giant step, because looking from the outside, a career that, like you described the career your dad had, or even at points in your career where you've been, it would have been very easy from the outside to say, yeah, that's successful. You manage, that's great. But cultivating this inner compass, knowing your inner north, wherever that draws from, could be tragically, could be also of reading more, talking to people, listening to people who share, like right here. It's like Adorno said, there's no right life in the wrong. So, but back to your journey. So, okay, at that point, we know where you are. So what else did you do with this year? Because I look at you, I see your racing bike, I see you're in tip-top shape. What are you doing with your time now?
Yeah, so as I said, I've sort of taken this last year and a half off and doing a lot of investing in myself. Yeah, as I said to myself, on holiday, did a month of sort of off-grid self realization and all that kind of stuff. Then I was in Lisbon. I was living in Lisbon, Barcelona,
Lovely.
And then I've been in. Oh, it's been heavenly. I'm not gonna pretend I haven't had an amazing time. And now I'm in Cape Town, obviously, since October last year. And I decided that I wanted to start getting busy again, as in work-wise and stuff like that after April. Mm-hmm. And basically, end of last year, I learned. I highly urge anyone, I know it's a luxury, of course, to sort of have some time to invest in yourself, whether that be a week, or it doesn't have to be a month or 6 months or traveling, whatever, but spend some time really just in, investing in yourself. Because I learned some things about myself, Mark, one of which, or two of which is, I looked back, or throughout our lives, we often look at when times are going, like we're having a bad week, bad month, that turns into a bad quarter, right? We look back on that and go like, oh God, why is it going so bad? Oh, everything's against me and whatever. But we very rarely look back on why, when times are going well, like why are they going well? Like why is everything going well for me right now? And this is actually something that Matthew McConaughey said in his Green Lights, this book, right? He said, if you look back at the times when things are going really well, for example, I would look back on a period when things are going well for me. Why are they going well for me? What am I doing in my life that I don't usually do, or that I'm doing consistently right now? And I learned two things about myself. And these two things are so important that if I have these two things, everything else falls into place. And I'm very fortunate. These two things are very simple things. One of which is running. I need to run like 6 days a week.
pair of shoes. That's great.
Literally, yeah. And so that's an easy thing for me. Obviously, living in a city that you can do that in. I love to run anyway. I've always loved running, and obviously I go in and out of running frequency, as we all do with busy times. And the other one is cooking. I love to cook. Like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I'm kind of a natural host in the sense that I love to cook and have people around for dinner, and I take joy in that. I like to host and entertain and provide for people. So if I'm cooking for people at least once every 2 weeks, like a big dinner party or whatever, and I'm cooking, because often you're busy with things and you order food or you just, whatever, leftovers, right? You think you're saving time. I'll save some time, by just ordering some food in or whatever. It's easy. I can carry on working, and you eat that food, and you kind of feel a bit bad about yourself because you're eating all this kind of rubbish, and then you're spending money, and then it adds up, right? But if I simply would cook for myself at least 5 times a week and go out with some friends or cook for them once a week, once every 2 weeks, and run, everything else falls into place. I feel good about myself. I enjoy cooking because it's meditative for me. It's my meditation, cooking, even by myself, either sometimes just with a podcast, sometimes with music, sometimes I'll call a friend, sometimes I'll have a glass of wine, sometimes I won't, but it's all meditative for me. And you know what? I'm going to do it tonight because I haven't done it in a while. Anyway, so to your point about where I'm going with all of this is that I learned, I think this is one last thing, Mark, I like to talk, mate. So sorry about that.
It's perfect.
One thing again on this sort of passion porn that we say, that everyone likes to say, oh, you have to do what your passion is or you're failing, right? That's rubbish, right? Because we have to be real. So I came up with something because and I call it the 3 Ps or whatever you want to call it. Everyone has, a passion, a profession, and a purpose. Yeah. And I made this up because I was like trying to understand myself and like, what is my passion? What is my profession? What is my purpose? Right. So, and how I defined them was, your passion is, what do I live for? What do I absolutely live for? Your profession is, what do I live from? Like, what do I actually live from? What provides me? And then your purpose is, what do I stand for? Sorry, no, your passion. Yeah, your purpose. What do I stand for? Right. Yeah. And you can think about it as 3 circles. And obviously, the dream would be that they're all the same, right? And some people that can be, right? But for the most part, that's not true. Now, for me, my passion, what I live for is being on stage, Mark. I just want to be on stage, educating people, entertaining people, preferably at the same time. That's what I live for. That's my passion. Now, my profession, and that's what's emerged. At any one point, ask me in 2013, what's your profession? I'm a venture capitalist. I'm a finance person who invests in businesses, right? Ask me when we met, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm building a business, right? But in reality, like where I am right now in with my profession is, I'm a public speaker. What do I live from? I live from public speaking, whether it be selling my live show, which I rarely do, unfortunately. I'd love to do them every night if I could. One day, Mark, pushing towards, I have a show. But I also lecture at accelerators. I talk about pitching. I talk about investor readiness. I lecture on how to, be a modern founder today, and so that's what I live from right now, right? Yep. And I'm scaling that up as we speak. Hire me, any sweet people, if you'd like. I'll do you a sweet people discount.
All links in the show notes.
All links in the show notes. There you go. Always be selling, as they say. And then my purpose, right? Of course, we're all told we should have a purpose. And, and of course, some of us, it's obvious, like some people feel really strong about the oceans, right? And of course, Mark, you and I could go and join a Greenpeace boat.
We could.
But the reality of it is, I like to look at it from a very realist perspective. And this is somewhat still answering your question about what have I done in the last year or so, because this is all things I've learned from this process, right? Your purpose is, in my opinion, is, if you want to leave an impact, how can you, where can you move the needle in the world, right? Now, you and I could go jump on a Greenpeace boat and stop some whaling, right? But in reality, our donation might actually have a greater impact than us individually. I might be terrible at stopping people from whaling. You know what I mean? Exactly. So often there's a school of thought out of Oxford. I think it's called reciprocal altruism or something like that, where it's like if you're really smart and a great banker, you going and joining a Greenpeace boat, well, actually, you could have a greater impact as being a banker, making a load of money and then donating a lot of that money to support Greenpeace, as opposed to being on a boat and going, I'm making an impact. No, actually follow what you're best at and then do good with it, right? So having said that, I believe I can move the needle in the world of men's masculinity and mental health, because I believe that I can put my neck out there and talk about topics like learning to cry at the age of 31. And a lot of my friends were like, oh my God, thank you for saying that. How did you do it? Teach me, because I can't cry either. And it's getting a problem now in relationships where girls or guys are like, you're an emotionless person. I can't be with that, etc. Right? Because we're taught to be this way anyway. So that's stuff that I've learned in the last year or so. And now I'm training for the Ironman, which is a bit of a tech cliche.
Holy moly! Yeah, but also it's amazing. If anyone is following you on Instagram, you're busting your balls, man. You can totally see how serious you are about this, and I really appreciate seeing that. It's so cool. You're totally in your power, and you're just so invested in that. And you share this journey. You got your own account, Iron Mad. We can follow you on that journey, and I love how you again bring this to the stage and share things that go well, but also the things that fail. Like, I don't know, your bike breaks down 3 times a day and stuff like that. And it's just very entertaining to follow you around on that journey.
Thanks, man. Yeah. No, and the reason that came about was very briefly was, as I mentioned, the running thing was really, really going so well for me. And my running fitness was at the best it's ever been end of last year. And I was like, I'm training all this time. I've obviously taken this time off. So I'm training so much. It would be good to train towards something, actually, because I'm just so fit right now. And I mean, like, that's great. That's great. I feel great. I'm healthy, but maybe I should run a marathon. I should do something with it. And I've done those before. And the Ironman, which for those who are not familiar with that, it's a sort of an ultra marathon, ultra distance event where I swim 3.8 kilometers in the ocean. Straight after that, I cycle 180 kilometers, and then straight after that, I run a marathon, 42.2 kilometers, all in back to back, right? And I'm doing the South African Championships in April. And then after that, I've ticked that box, and then I can
amazing
move on to something else.
That is amazing. So we talked about so much, but as one of the last thoughts I want to put out there is what I really appreciate as someone who's invested in design and how you can look at designing things from different angles, from packaging, branding, experience design, digital, offline events, all those things. To me, it feels like you really got a hold of your whole life design process in a way. And it's really like you somehow managed to get the bird's eye view of your whole life. And like the 3P model you just told us about, which is amazing. I'm totally going to use this after the interview straight away and try and answer this for myself. And I think a lot of sweeties will do that as well. And just to me, it feels like you gained a new perspective, and you design your whole life, or redesign or readjust parts of your life. And this is something I really appreciate in following your journey. And I just wondered if there's some new angles or some wisdom you gained from having the freedom and the possibility to look at life from this lens.
Interesting conversation, actually, because I was chatting to a friend recently as well about this, and I realized that I think the majority of us are taught to look at, our careers and work as, I will, for example, a lot of my friends work in finance because that's what I studied, right? I did 2 degrees, economics, and then a postgrad in corporate finance, right? Neither of which I'm really actually that interested in. Economics is interesting, but it's not my passion, right? But in terms of how we look at our lives and the life we want to live, so my finance friends, for example, will go, all right, I become an analyst, I graft for 3 years, I'll become an associate, then I'll earn a slightly, then I'll earn a better salary, then I'll graft for 2 years and I'll become a VP. And then I'll have people under me to do the hard work. So I'll work less. I'll earn like 3 times as much now. Then now I'm flying a bit. And that's why I gave that example of the 3 Ps, right? Yeah. Because then they'll go, all right, that's 8 years in now. and now I can live the lifestyle I want to live, right? I look at it the other way around. I go, what is the lifestyle I want to live? Okay, now how can I attain that? And it's not like, I'm not saying, I need to have 17 Ferraris. All right, well, obviously, okay, I can start a business then, and obviously just make sure that that's successful and I can have that. But I'm like, right now, I had this conversation actually literally a few days ago with a friend who has a business, and she's in that dilemma right now because it's been going for 3 years and it's post-COVID, it's not doing so well. And her family is saying, hey, come home, get a proper job again, and we'll support you and you'll be fine and you'll be happy. And she's like, yeah, whilst I'm not earning the potential of what I could earn, like you and I right now, giving myself example again as well, I could go and get a job right now where I'd like to think, obviously, touch wood, toy, in a consulting firm or something else. And then I can maybe earn like, 200,000 euros a year or something like that, with a bonus and things like that. I can earn a lot of money. Like I could take a job that's my highest earning potential. And you would think then I'm rich. So like my friend, she's like, I could go, she's formerly a lawyer. She's like, I could go back to law and earn, say just, a high salary, 100,000 euros a year, whatever. And then, quote unquote, I think I'm rich, right? But I'd be working really hard for something that I don't particularly love. I enjoy it because I'm good at it, but it's not like I love and I'm passionate about it. She's like, right now I earn like 40,000. So like, like under 2 times less, but I have so much free time that I'm doing yoga. I'm doing all these amazing things. Aren't I richer now?
Exactly.
And that's the way I look at my life. Like I'm not earning the max amount I could be earning. Like, I could be maybe earning 100,000, 200,000. I don't know if I'm lucky enough to get a job like that, right? Whatever it is. I could definitely be earning more if I took some proper salary job, right? But right now, I'm like, I travel where I want. I live where I want. I'm not left wanting. I'm still doing what I want, eating what I want, I'm still living a great life. Yeah, I'm not earning as much as I could be then and saving more and have a bigger flat and, things like that. But right now, dude, I'm so rich.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm so
and
rich.
That's what, and also that's what you sound and feel and look like in a way that you are just very content and very happy. And I think we've gone full circle now because we started at our times when we met. As founders, as people within the startup community. And I think what you just said can resonate with a lot of startup founders in general, entrepreneurs, because there is also different ways to approach founding a company and getting into the startup. Are you working for the exit, or do you love what you do? Do you love your craft and you just build it around this? So that I think there's very different approaches to why you found something, how you run and conduct your business, and how you will end up feeling about it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's it, man. Life design. So don't think about, I'll get that job and then I'll live this life. I'm like, I want to live that life. How do I make that happen? How can I engine? And I will say no to things. So if that big money offer came in, because in 2018, I did this. Before I started Lunicorn, I just quickly thought I'd check what jobs I could get. And I did that. I got 5 job offers. One was like the big money offer, the 150,000 euro a year plus bonus. My mom was like, take the money and run, but I was like, yeah, but it was with a consulting firm and I would be working very hard and it's not what I necessarily wanted to do. It is a path. And lastly on that, just to finish that, because those who have done that aren't doing things wrong either. I'll give you an example of one of my finance friends. He's now done 8-9 years in finance. He's almost at the top, right? He's earning 200,000 euros a year, right? And it's not his passion. He doesn't live for what he does. But what he does now, the opportunity cost of him quitting to do a startup and spending his, he loves golf. And what he does, and he enjoys what he does because he feels smart, because he is smart, and he gets to do something that a lot of people aren't capable of doing. And it's fulfilling because he gets to do smart work, right? And contribute to things. Yeah, of course, he's not like, oh my God, I live for this. I can't live without doing financial models for, mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
But he's at a point where his profession pays for his passion. And also his purpose, because he likes to, I don't actually know, but say he likes to donate to Greenpeace now. Now his profession pays for those two things, and that's okay.
Yep.
So if you are in that position, that's also okay. But as long as you have the right life design. Now he just bought a Porsche, like now he's got it all covered, and he's in his early 30s and he's loving life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But his life design now is in the position that it should be. So I like to think about how you want to live your life and just set it up. And of course, it takes some getting used to it, takes some learning. I didn't just do this overnight. This didn't just happen for me like it'll happen for anyone else. Not to mislead anyone.
Perfect. Matt, we've gone full circle. There's only 2 more questions left. 2 questions that I ask all my interview guests. So the first one is, what's next? What can we look forward to? You talked about a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff in the show notes, your book, Lunicorn, your journey to Iron Man, to Iron Matt, your personal projects. But what's next? What's coming up?
Everything I'm focused on right now is all down to the Ironman, April 3rd, the race. I've took this opportunity just to train like a full-time athlete, something I've always wanted to do. But just a bit of a personal thing. I like fitness and all that stuff. So I've just sort of been selfish, and I've just focused on training full-time. So that's my main focus. I'm almost only 4 weeks away. On Sunday, it's 4 weeks. So, and I'm doing a half Ironman actually this Sunday. So yeah, just all focused on that. But after that, I really looked at, what do I really love? Life design, Marcus, life design, Mark, like, what do I love to do? And I love to lecture, and I love to my profession, like what do I live from? My public speaking. So I am in conversations with a couple of firms and accelerators to actually do some almost like resident lecturer, professor, entrepreneur in residence, professor in residence roles. And I'm going to get back to Europe because I believe that's the space that'll give me the most opportunities. And I think after this conversation, it's reminded me to get back to doing my live shows. So I think I'm going to try and find a lowest hanging fruit way to get my live shows going again, even if there's only 2 people watching, even if no one's watching. And I'll commit to doing that weekly if I can, online somewhere. Awesome. Try sell some shows, and it's baby steps, and just try and get consistent again with doing something that I'm passionate about.
Very inspiring. I think we can all listen to that and work on that ourselves. And my last question for today, I usually ask people what inspires them right now, but you dropped so many amazing recommendations for books, for startups, for your own work. So what I'm really interested, you talked a lot about cooking. What's your favorite recipe? Can you share the Matt special with us?
Well, the funny thing is, I have friends who are cooks, right? Like chefs or even when you say, I like to cook, people say, what's your favorite recipe? And it's like, well, exactly. The fact that I cook means that I cook a multitude of things. I think, do you cook?
Yeah, I love it. I love the craft.
You love to cook. Okay, good. Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, 100%. It is, right? So like it comes and goes. Like I went through periods where I would love to make vegetable stews. Like I've gone through periods where I love to make miso-based Asian fusion dishes, right? Right now, I'll tell you what I'm going to cook tonight because,
that's perfect.
To be honest, what I've been cooking the last 3 months since I've been training is very basic and boring because I just need to eat carbs for my cycling and my running. And so it's actually, my diet right now is not very exciting, but it's actually about fueling right now at the moment, which usually I'm about, passion and cooking. But tonight I'm actually defrosting some trout right now, and I'm going to do a bit of a trout with bok choy in the wok. And I've got some white rice because it's good for carbs, and some simple miso paste, and some broccolini, and some sweet potato actually as well. Probably some onion and some peppers, all in a big wok, bit of a stir fry type dish.
Awesome.
And then plonk that on some rice with some miso and soy, and then I think that's just about it actually.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thanks so much. And once you're done with Iron Matt and you can have some sweet snacks again, my recommendation, if you haven't tried it before, try making some miso caramel. Goes great with popcorn or ice cream. You just stir up your regular melted butter, sugar, maybe a bit of baking powder to make it fluffy, and then you stir in some regular miso paste, and it gives your whole caramelized sauce a nice umami touch. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm all over that.
Stay true to the name, something sweet for finishing. Matt, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your personal journey, your learnings. It's been so inspirational. I'm pretty sure sweet people take away so much from this. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, sweet people. Big love to all of you. Hope to meet you all someday, somewhere. Ciao for now.
Take care. What a talk. I really enjoyed talking to Matt. I appreciate his openness about his entrepreneurial personal journey, sharing things that didn't work for him or affected him. I think it's that kind of talks that resonate with people. I think that's because it's part of everyone's business and everyone's life, really. So it's good to talk about that stuff. I really like that we share the idea of bringing entertainment into the world of business. I think that's where the future of big and relevant brands lie. And yeah, let me know if that inspired you to try a different approach, to tell different stories as a personal brand with your brands. Yeah. Next week, you'll hear a special episode. It's a deep dive about brand entertainment. We'll talk about some successful cases where brands did a great job in creating entertaining content, creating relevant brand stories or media products. Looking forward to that. That's all, folks. Take care. Have a great week, and I'll hear you on the sweet side.
This podcast is produced by Sweetspot Studio. New episodes each week, wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you enjoyed the show, leave a rating and subscribe to never miss an episode. Find out more at sweetspot-studio.com.